Good evening. Incredibly, the Walter Scott fascists publicise their activities. This is footage of the Edinburgh Sir Walter Scott Club 102nd annual dinner. Yeah, these are the folk that cull the returning troops, that run the Las Vegas military tattoo, and that dismember all of Scotland's society and their council leaders. Alice Dare Hutton is pictured in the first few images, and incredibly the elite grouping are singing a song about Hawick, which is a very impoverished town. They've just cast Councillor Pender into jail for paedophilia, yeah, and I believe that will be a cover just for the mafia operations. What we were looking for last time was the activities of Lord Sanderson of Bowden, and I've never found anything on him until this YouTube video popped up. So, the Edinburgh Sir Walter Scott Club 102nd annual dinner, and look at the sad bastards. Yeah, these are the folk that would have to fight for our country in single-handed chivalrous combat. Alistair Hutton has got the red tartan trousers on, and all of them have got the effete bow ties. Hutton, former head of the Borders Council, husband of Deirdre, former head of the Borders Health Board, and the Queen of the Quangos. I don't know which one Bowden is. Yeah, this is Gordon Bowden's cover. Gordon Bowden's from Derby, is linked into the Dukes of Roxburgh and the Duke of... I keep forgetting. Anyway, let's go a little bit further into the song, because the music is typically pathetic, and there's the potter's vase that they laugh at, because these are the people that send Scotsmen to war all of the time, and that is the Tyrolese joke that I showed you before. Yeah, the secretaries group that launder the money, yeah, all across the world. Hutton's got dozens of directories. The Borders Chamber of Commerce is registered in Glasgow. Yeah, like the Paisley Christianity fraud, and he used to, before I came on the crime scene, give the sermon in the Christian church. He is the head of the British Legion, the former head of the Borders Council. He's on the Walter Scott Foundation, the Abbotsford Trust, and all of the interlocking crimes, and his wife is a legend, but you cannot find her now on the internet. Yeah, Deirdre Hutton. Yeah, or even the Borders Health Board frauds, where my uncle pretended that he was cheated by them and sent into sub-Saharan Africa by the Church of Scotland. That's Gilbert Curry, Uncle Gilbert Curry. Yeah, and my auntie is the guide leader, and you know all about his paramilitary presence at the Las Vegas military tattoo, and you know all about the brownie jokes, the jokes about the church roof, and all the Puka Winnie the Pooh warmongering jokes, and why British and Scottish troops always have their part of the joke in the dead for the ashes, also in the Christian Bible. That last word was ever independent. Yeah, this is the Better Off Together movement, because Robert Peel is their friend. He's the one, the peeler from the Metropolitan Police that helps them kill the returning troops with the tank commanders. But at least this lot are open enough to make a video about their patriotism and the kilt joke. Yeah, the kilt is the register of the clan tartans, and that is the vestarium joke for Rabsy Nisbet. Okay, right, let now take you to... Oh no, the music is pathetic. I want you to feel a little bit sick for a little bit longer. The median age, you must notice, is very near the grave. Yeah, and that there is some poetic justice in that. There is no youth presence, and I'm delighted by that. Yeah, got the fur coats on, the furriest jokes. Yeah, the religious fraud, and giving the sermon on Remembrance Sunday, also performed by a curry, but a different one, with his son in all of the military outfit. And remember, the British Legion is run by the Duke of Westminster, who has homes at Path Head, and all of them are the slave masters for the Freemasons. And that makes you feel quite sick too, because the Freemasons' children form the next group of militias, and all of those are in their early teens, their late teens or their early 20s, and that's the Wargrave sector that this lot excel in. Plaques on every wall in our region, and all of the abbeys brutalised yeah, by King Henry. Right then, I could not find this character before. His name is Prescott, so that's Lord Sanderson of Bowden is likely to be speaking in that lot later on. I don't need to show you a picture of him. And what we were talking about in the earlier video is a cabal of people that are behind this, led by the Duchess of Sutherland, and I've now found on the computer next door the Bruces, yeah, and a new set of the factors for the Duke of Roxburgh are the Stormouth Darlings. We've hit on Peter Stormouth Darling, which has led to the closure of Stormouth Darling in Kelso, because the only notary that they employ in Kelso has died recently. Yeah, the people that have died at their hands are massive. Yeah, and there's the Preble that interlocks with the Rothschilds. And they're smart enough not to prance around, yeah, in the fancy suits, yeah, and to be associated with heads of corrupted local councils or the Las Vegas military tattoo. They quietly work in the back room with Prince Charles's financial advisor, Christopher Chambers. Okay, so do you get it? These are the people that sent the colonists to the colonies, that cull the gods in the conflicts as a laugh at their classic output, which are the Clutha myths. And that takes you again into the Leveson inquiry and the Levy and McRae company that are the inquest people at all of the crashing of the Lockerbie plane, all of the stuff that ensues about the traitors having cancers and being sent back in high publicity outcomes like the Leveson inquiry. Right then, sorry, I cannot get the Prescott thing to open. So Prescott was Tony Blair's genocidal deputy. Oh no, I've lost it. Anyway, this is Lord Sanderson of Bowden's list of companies which we were on to before the computer crashed the last time. Okay, this is just one of them. It's got Ponzi schemes openly declared on it. Yorkshire Bank Public Limited Company, Norman's Bay Limited, the King's Own Scottish Borderers Association Funds. That's the King's Own Regiment from the Scottish borders. Yeah, they're reservists. They've changed the numbers and the IDs to numbered regiments now, for shame. And they raise funds, yeah, for, I forget what it's called, Soldiers Abroad or something, and they raise their funds at the Hoyk Rugby Sevens. The King's Own Scottish Borderers Museum Fund. Yeah, I told you about Robert the Bruce's heart being in the Melrose Abbey, in the Dryborough Abbey. Yeah, right next to where they meet, right opposite David Murray's golf course, and right opposite the donkeys, yeah, that are in the council building and in the field across the road from that, as a joke about Jesus Christ and the fiction. The donkey budget is, I can't remember how much it is per donkey per year, quite substantial, but nothing like Alex Salmond's panda jokes. 70,000 for the sugar cane that the panda eats in the Edinburgh Zoo, right next to David Murdoch Field, Murrayfield, the Hoyk Cashmere Company Limited, Thomas and Kennett Marina Limited, Edinburgh Woolen Mill Limited, the Scottish Mortgage Investment Trust, financial services scams, housing crashes, Axis Technologies PLC, Yorkshire and Clydesdale Bank Pensions Trustees Limited, St Mary's School Melrose, the fascist Abbotsford Trust, AWG Ponzi Shelf number 11, crashed Clydesdale Bank PLC, run in the Paisley epicentre for the Christianity fraud, and only 30 minutes away from where the stammering king made his speech about the Empire and the Tyrol and all of the places where our troops get slaughtered. National Australia, the colonists in the Colony Group Europe Limited. Okay, so this is Lord Sanderson of Bowden, and let's scan down just in case he's been on those. Right up to 2 of them he's still on, and that's because they are relatively decent and they're employers. Yeah, they're not about the war dead and profiteering from them. Hoyk Cashmere Company runs on to the present day, and the Abbotsford Trust, the little bastard, is sad enough to be on that. I would like to take a look at that. Let's see what we've got further down. So Abbotsford is the home of Sir Walter Scott. It's been rebuilt at the public expense, and goodness knows who gets to live in the ancient building now. It will be one of the Scots that we mentioned in the interlocks earlier on, and I've got them next door again. Okay, so Consensus Scotland Limited, don't know what that is. Kairos International, Scottish Pride Holdings, UA Fuel Limited, up to 1994. This is Sanderson of Bowden, a lord of the realm and the negotiator of the EU fish quotas since Mrs Thatcher was the boss at the crime scene. Triton 2 Limited, Thomas and Kennett Marina, Edinburgh Woolen Mill, Aldi's. That's a joke. That becomes the Co-op supermarket crash, and Aldi's is a supermarket that's already been crashed. He dissolved that in 1999, Lord Sanderson of Bowden. There's the Scottish Mortgage Investment Trust PLC, Yorkshire and Clydesdale Bank, you can bet your boots that if you opened those banking interests, you would find the man called Marx, who was the head of the Co-op Bank when they crashed it. He's also the head of the Anglo-Irish banks that were crashed, and he's the BBC Radio 4. Yeah, I've no doubt at all that Jim Naughtie will be in those groupings. Yeah, BBC Radio 4, the people that tell the lies every day on radio. Okay? Pension trustee funds. Can you see whose hands the future of our funding and our pensions and our investments are in? St Mary's School, Melrose, we've done the list of that. National Australia Group, Europe Limited. So I could go on, and this is only one of his registrations. I'm going to show you the Abbotsford Trust because that interests me. I cannot get John Preston to come up. He was the man I forgot about in the earlier videos. Right then, that will take a bit of time with all of those things open, but let's see. And I'll see if I can get... Oh, here we go. Abbotsford, Melrose, Roxburghshire. Remember how many people that we've seen, yeah, on the boards of the school that is the Melrose private school? Many decent people went there too. John Jeffreys, the Bairds. Yeah, now the I forget what they call Gareth Baird runs the butcher shop in Melrose. Nice guy. But all of them they'll be the younger members of this grouping. I think he's Lord Lieutenant for Scotland. Directors on the Abbotsford. Yeah, this is Sir Walter Scott's people, yeah, still at work. Plaques on every wall. TD6 9BQ, company number SC328535. Let's do the dirty on them. Lord Charles Russell Sanderson, Mr. Andrew Douglas Home, Bichard Taylor, Dalgleish, Giles Ingram, James Essex Holloway, James Wolfe QC, It's the Law Dad, Mr. John Philip Henry Schomburg Scott, Mr. John Robertson Wright, the HSBC magnate. Yeah, you know why Christopher Plummer never gets an Oscar? Because there's a Mr. Patrick Joseph Scott Plummer, a fascist, and they've got a woman in it, which is quite stunning, because they won't let the women go to the Hawick common riding. Yeah, they're only allowed to participate one day in the week, I think. Yeah, and the men get drunk on the rum, and all of it is a series of vicious gestures about all of the war dead through all of the bloody Borders history. Mrs. Elizabeth Ann McIntyre, Mrs. Jane Douglas Home. Yeah, there's a Douglas Home writes for the Scottish papers too, and her name is on the papers all the time. Yet this lot are much more secretive for reputational reasons. Mrs. Lucy Ann Maxwell Scott. Yeah, they're still at the trough. Look at the periods of service. Yeah, these are not crashing like the banks that they run. Yeah, in 2008, this is a consistent money stream for them. Jane Douglas Home, Lucy Ann Maxwell Scott, Sir William Eric Kinloch Anderson, Andrew Douglas Home, done him before, Dominic Maxwell Scott, Jason Dyer, Nigel Water Buchanan. Ken Buchanan was a relative of mine, the boxer. Yeah, all of the little plants to cover up all of their crimes. Yeah, and John Robertson Wright is a billionaire, lives in the town of Ednam, and is reputed to worship by some of the worshippers at the Church of Scotland in our town. He's a massive financier. He's on the college, the Borders College Board in Michael Moore's Galashiels, and that takes you into Dubai for all of their interests. He is massive, and I've made several videos on him before. And if you look up Lord Sanderson of Bowden, a lot of this is history for you already. I'm going to try and find John Prescott at Leveson. Don't think it's going to let me do that. So let's get that searching for John Prescott. Fat bastard, socialist, run the Iraq war with Tony Blair, drops out of power, tries to run as a police commissioner for his region. Yeah, he's in on really shaky ground, and he knows it, and he's looking quite sick even by the time they get to the Leveson inquiry. John Prescott, Leveson. So Leveson is related to the Dukes of Sutherland, yeah, the fascists that sent the colonists to the colonies. And next door I've got the interlocks for the companies that they run, and there is Walter Scott himself. Yeah, the curator for all of the abbeys that were razed to the ground by Henry VIII, and he's wasted all of his income from that, and all of it. Press regulation, crumbling credibility of Leveson and press regulation. 7th July 2013, when I started to make videos on him, and he dropped out of politics completely because he was unable to become Ian Hislop. We've seen him presenting at the at the Leveson inquiry, but I just had the video set up to show you. Here we are. Yeah, and they've taken it down. They're quite loyal even to the socialist thieves.
We're back now, 2006, when of course you were Deputy Prime Minister. Did you have some concern at that point that your voicemails may have been hacked into, Lord Prescott?
No, I think I'm a figure of attention to a lot of the press over the course of my lifetime. So
that's Lord Prescott. He's not retired. He's just joined Sanderson of Bowden in the pig trough. Yeah, and you can see the fat under his chin, the fat under his eyes. Yeah, and this is not an open declaration that this is the Leveson inquiry now. Yeah, because it is all a stitch up. It is a method. He got remunerated £40,000 for what the British press did to him. Tony Blair had the protester chucked out of the Leveson inquiry by his private security firm, and he was telling them that he was a slave to JP Morgan and the bank, and how much he earned from them, and Tony Blair denied as much the amount that the Australian protester was jailed for, and he said it was only a couple of million a year. That's one of the participating banking frauds. Okay, I'm going to take you to the other issues that I told you about earlier, but I want to take you into the Bruces and show you that my accusations are the people in the Braveheart movie, yeah, like the Montefiore's and all of the linkages to Bruce and Bruce's heart being in the Abbotsford buildings, yeah, for the Freemasons, because of his allegiance to Longshanks, which was portrayed in the Braveheart movie. Okay, Lady Victoria Mary, yeah, and Peter Lothian. Peter Lothian has died this week, and he's the one who was the man at the head of the banking groups, and we have seen that in some of the tabs that I showed you earlier. Right, I'm going to go next door and show you some of the Bruces. There is the Google images of Peter Lothian, the fat bastard, the sad guy that was commemorated at the Catholic Church on the weekend. And remember, the Borders cabal includes other members of the Kerr dynasty, including Michael Ancram, who is on the House of Lords for ages and ages and ages, lives just beyond the Jedburgh crime scene, where I'm being persecuted by the law courts, all part of the same cabal. Yeah, and they're the ones that ran the Highland clearances. Okay, right, there he is, in a really good condition, like John Prescott, yeah, to defend our country's freedom, yeah, behind the RBS logo, behind the World Economic Forum's logo, yeah, and all of the oil that they roll out of the persecuted countries that are now the Islamic terror threat, yeah, under all of those chins. World Economic Forum, Lord Peter Sutherland, yeah, Lothian rather. Right then, let's show you something of the Bruce's dirty deeds. This is just one. There's a whole clan. Sun's gone in. So, let me just run through the list of what I looked at before, because the Britney Spears song about Amy is sung, yeah, and there's a Michelle Amy on the listing that takes you down all the way. So I started with Charles Edward Bruce, yeah, because I looked at Montefiore or some of those other links in through the Melrose schools, and I found the Edinburgh International Book Festival, Douglas Andrew Connell, Charles Edward Bruce, Robert Andrew Stormouth Darling, yeah, a different one, yeah, that's not Peter, yeah, and that's not the scandals about the man who's got the same name as the Rangers player at Stormouth Darling in Kelso. He has led to several incidents in the Scottish press, yeah, and the poor people that are suffer for this one are the ordinary employees of that company, because they have been sacked, yeah, or sent to some other border town or Scottish town, yeah, or crime scene, yeah. You've got Charles Adam Laurie Seabag Montefiore, yeah, the name that associates itself with semen in the testicles and the mountain of fire that could well be Vesuvius as the crime scene. Massive banking dynasties, and it takes you, all of it, into the Commerzbank Securities Limited, and it's quite shocking what you see there. There's one of them is called Shazo, like my mate that had most of his abdominal organs removed because of his loyalty to the religious fraud and its cover-up. He calls himself, when he goes to the Indian restaurant where they do not speak English properly like him, he's actually Welsh French. He calls himself Morgan at the Indian restaurant. Yeah, and his picture on Facebook is of Abelard Roycliffe with a turban on, and he's an academic stealing from the British kids, and he's the entrepreneur that wanted to take all of the activities that could have gone to sub-Saharan Africa as healthcare that we've had for 200 years, but he wanted to invent new drugs and run congresses to discuss that. I'm totally ashamed of my academic colleagues now. William Legg Burke, Commerzbank Securities Limited, Michelle Amy. When you open hers, it is so big that you cannot get it in the conventional format. Okay, so let's start with Charles Edward Bruce. Okay, because he's the most famous on the listing, with the possible exception of the Stormouth Darlings. Since I came along, Yeah, and Gordon Bowden was prepared to talk about Peter Stormont Darling and his crimes in Lothian Road. Lord Peter Lothian, all of the cover-ups from the Catholic Church. And I mentioned some of the other saints that they were commemorating. The sainthood is part of the art, and the MacKillops are part of the sainthood now. Formerly head of the RBS spokespeople. This takes you into the Abbey at Dunfermline. Charles Edward Bruce, Director Summary. Scottish Lime Centre Trust. That's not a joke about the ashes, it's a joke about the lime that goes into the grave for the war deads, and you've seen that in the Mozart movies I've made, yeah, about Andrew Lloyd Webber chucking the lime in the open graves in Vienna where the Rothschild Central Bank is. Right then, the Association for the Protection of Rural Scotland, Historic Scotland Foundation. Ah, yeah, the links to the patrons of the National Galleries of Scotland. Sorry for the resolution on this computer, which is why I don't use it anymore. Patrons of the National Galleries. 50 Lothian Road, Festival Square, Edinburgh, EH3 9WJ. Do you remember me telling you about my relatives in Jedburgh, the crime scene, where the law courts are covered up by all of the loyal relatives, and the Rayburn paintings, the authenticity of which they were arguing about? This is a massive Greek-looking building in Princess Street. Yeah, everything is the Royal Moniker, patrons of the National Galleries Limited. Let me show you who they are. And remember, we were led into this by the Robert the Bruce dynasty from the Abbotsford Trust, where Robert the Bruce's heart is buried in memory of Longshanks' activities. And remember that the songs that are sung about the Thomson character, Thomson's monument, is a memory in memory of the might of Great Britain, and that's the Rule Britannia song associated with those masons that you saw surrounding Alistair Hutton in their Edinburgh hub, in the bow ties, Better Off Together. And the head of the Better Off Together movement was associated with the Morton Solicitors Group, yeah, and the current sheriff on my divorce case. Right then, directors, patrons of the National Galleries, 50 Lothian Road, yeah, with their little fingers out and their trews on. Burness LLP, massive scandal, law firms that are globalised, Lord Charles Edward Bruce. Duchess Evelyn, Mary, Duchess of Sutherland. She's decent enough to drop out when I get into the crime scene. Yeah, there she is, dropped out there. Yeah, this lot, Burness, the Launderers, LLP, Limited Liability Partnership, are still at the trough with Lord Charles Edward Bruce. Burness Solicitors, no longer required. Lord Macfarlane of B. Norman Macfarlane, B.E. Norman Macfarlane, very difficult to find him. Benjamin John Paget Thompson, like the Monument Man, the Rule Britannia song. Charles Adam Laurie Semenbag Montefiore, Jens Crystal Hogel, Richard James Burns, a patriotic poet no doubt, Mr. Robin Andrew Stormont Darling, Mrs. Carol Colburn Grieger, they let women in, Mr. Robert Begg, Miss Carola Marion Stormont Darling, Miss Elaine Ellen, Miss Fiona Mary Elizabeth Walker, Miss Iona. Oh, isn't that lovely? That's about Scottish religion, did you know? Yeah. And the Scottish Prime Minister, the Labour Party leader, that died on Oban was fondly remembered. His name is Smith, like the directors of all of these scams on Company Check, John Smith. The Hogan's Heroes and the Bing Crosby profiteering in war bonds jokes about John Smith being undetectable on the business register. Miss Pamela Joan Murray, yeah, that will be Mrs. Murray, yeah, the legless Freemason, yeah, who's got the golf course right opposite where Robert the Bruce's heart is buried, in that Greek-like building. And William Wallace is in the woods so no one can see him. Mrs. Virginia, Countess of Airlie, that's the Airlies that work at the universities that could have been my colleagues if they had given me a job when I returned for my job applications in 2008, and I met Baroness Blackstone at the Royal Greenwich Museum. That's the Admiralty buildings. All of them are massive thieves against our country. Sir Angus, MacFarlane, MacLeod, Grossart, Sir Brian Gamel Ivory also interlocks with the Rothschilds. That's not Bill Gamel, that's the Life of Brian joke. And the Ivory, yeah, gets black people shot in Africa because they're the poachers. Sir Charles Anand Fraser, the first proseculator fiscal that I met in the Jedburgh battles, yeah, on my criminal case, yeah, about the sticking plaster on the ambulance driver's girlfriend and the niece of the best man at my wedding. Sir John Raymond Johnston CBE, the Marquis of Bute, the Right Honourable Lord Ian Bruce Lang of Moncton. Yeah, that sounds a bit more lowlife even than Dunfermline. Viscount, and Dunfermline is where they run the Lochfitty scams, and it's right next door to the Pumferston crime scene, which is right next door to the Lothian coast and Cramond and the Scottish fascism jokes. Viscount the Right Honourable, the Viscount Weir. Okay, so we found the Bruces, we found the, and there's the woman, Michelle Amy. Yeah, there are so many clients for her that they have to use the alternative format that only the Rothschilds have to resort to. There are no really big names on that, but there are thousands of them. Mr. Krishna Kamur Narayan Trikur, goodness knows where that allows you to launder into. Right then, Mr. Cormac Patrick, like the saint. Thomas O'Hare, like the hare with the amber eyes joke about Kristallnacht and killing all of the Jews for a laugh. None of them, yeah, have any shame on any of those massive war crimes that they keep committing, but we cannot smack our children. Commerzbank Capital Investment Company Limited, Mr. James Cameron Wall, 163 of 297 crashed. Do you remember the Max Wall comedian? Mr. Anthony David Levy, yeah, the Levy and McRae's that are the administrator for the Israeli armies in the Old Testament. The Levites in the Old Testament, okay? Christians, Jews, yeah, and the people that created both of them are the Pisos, which is why I was interested in the Montefiores, but they do not have a long history. Right then, so, and the history that we were going to show you takes you into Robert Andrew Stormouth Darling, the Connells. You remember the links to the Connells, the links to the Rothschilds, the links to the Douglas Homes, the links to Michael Moore and JP Morgan. Yeah, that's Tony Blair's company at Leveson. Yeah, and the massive interlocks with the Westminster companies. Yeah, the Westminster Foundation for Democracy Limited. Thousands of Ponzi shelves through the George Soros and the JP Morgan connection out of the Parliament buildings in Westminster. It's gotten quite dark outside. Okay, right then, where can I take you? Commerzbank Securities Limited. Let's have a wee look at that. Or the Commerzbank itself. And what we've got on the interlocks are links to the Dresdner banks, which was Hitler's bank. So David Levy again, James Cameron Wall. This is a pump and dump operation. That line there will be 2008. Let's just see. Yeah, all of them are in the havens from whenever that date was. And can you see how many are at this one trough for the Commerzbank Securities Limited? All of them crashing our banks in 2008, like Lord Peter Lothian and Fred Goodwin and all of the local heroes, including my relatives, yeah, right next to Rory Bremner, yeah, that will not allow you to open their registrations. That's a man called John Cook. I'm very fond of him. Yeah, his favourite movie is about Das Boot and the German and Austrian navies. Oh, there are hundreds of them. Hawkins. Yeah, the joke about the Hawks and the know-nothings, which is the joke about Notting Hill and Nottingham. Know nothing. Yet when it comes to the Leveson inquiry, take your £40,000, John Prescott, and shut the fuck up and try and become a police commissioner, because you're not content with what you can make out of the House of Lords already as one of the world's leading socialists and war criminals. Nigel John Wood, Nigel Morley, fascists all, Olivier Favre-Gillet, Oliver George Nigel Steele. Yeah, not many really famous names. Few Irish one: Paul Vincent Owen Slattery, Agnelli, Peter David Tasker, my mates in the pharmacy sector, and my other friends in the pharmacy sector, the Kellets. I found them on the Bruce's boards. And she's ill at the moment, but she's talking to me again and she's feeling a little bit better. Family, friends, all. Oh, there's hundreds of them. Richard Anthony Wallace. Oh, there's hundreds and hundreds, and all I'm trying to do is to establish that the Commerzbank was crashed in 2008, and suddenly the customer and the client's cash is elsewhere. Oh no! It's an earlier crash, round about the same time that Lord Sanderson of Bowden crashed Aldi's. It's 1999. The Honourable Sir Nicholas John Redmayne, Sir David Cecil Clementi, Sami Ismail Al-Sayed, the links to the Arabs again, and Egypt, and the laundering vents this time. Professor Peter Damien, spooky name Spencer. Right then, let's get back to the Borders Council and why they have the donkey field. This computer might be a little bit quicker. Yeah, the donkey braying joke is about Jesus. Jesus never lived, and on Palm Sunday he is the donkey in the Piso story. Oh no, let's get back to the list and just show you the workaday things that the British press use to defraud our people all of the time, to write all of the false news. And I've forgotten my forbidden fruit. I've just had a little long sleep this afternoon, and it was 8 o'clock when I woke up. That's maybe why the sun's gone in. Yeah, but it is quite sad when you look at the Freemasonic history of the world, and the Barren Rocks of Aden was played by these people at John F. Kennedy's funeral, and that is the joke about the Scottish dead in the Tyrol, Tyrolese laundering companies. Yet the jokes that I shared with you this morning in the video that will be uploaded very, very soon about these sad bastards, yeah, and their motives. Tony Blair has resigned as the envoy to the Middle East. Right then. And they're ever so proud that the colonies still belong to them. All of the colonies still belong to the Commonwealth and HRH. That's the Rio Tinto empires and the massive mining interests that the Queen runs with the Du Plessis in Australia, and with the Hancock's dynasty. That's not my criminal in-laws this time, it's the Lang Hancock's criminal dynasty. Yeah, right near McAlpine in Perth, where my local in-laws are the crime scene people. Yeah, that's my brother-in-law's cousin Simon. Still on my Facebook friends with all of their crimes in the dental and railway sectors. Right then, what we were going to look at, we're going to look at the list of tabs and the other issues that we might not have visited yet. So we've looked at the Ponzi trails out of there and the list of companies that run renewable numbered windmill companies. We've looked at the Duke of Sutherland and his links into the Bruce Interlocks, the Melrose School, and Lord Sanderson of Bowden and the Scottish Freemasons. This is the elitedom in Scotland linking to the slave masters like Alasdair Hutton in the tartan fucking trews with all the medals across his chest and the whole of the health board defrauded by his wife. Right then. And we've done the Tweed Commissioners and the owners of the Rivers Tweed, which take you into the landowners in England. Yeah, remember that? The Tweed Foundations, the Percys, the Dukes of Northumberland, who run the poison gardens and work with the woman in making the Harry Potter film. Yeah, that is J.K. Rowling, who lives in Cramond as a Scottish fascist now. She was picked as an author as a poor person, and she's really poor and she's really frightened because her family have MS, and she now understands why they get it. The Montefiore tab. Okay, this is what got me lit up, and I showed you that earlier. Simon Semenbag Montefiore. Yeah, all of the links to Tuscany in 784 and the Italian Jewish crime scenes in writing the Bible stories. And Moses is their name, Santa is their name. Let's go down until we get to some of the little shenanigans at the Scottish Borders Council and Alistair Nichols. Curb crawling incidents like Norman Pender's paedophilia incidents. They will not put them in power unless they have something to pin on them in a time of crisis, like this week when I'm hitting on them. Right then, Lev history. This is the Levesons. Yeah, and they are the Dukes of Sutherland. The Montefiore Institute, the EEC, remember? Lord Sanderson of Bowden negotiates the EU fish quotas for our bleating country. The EU was created as a political diversion. Yeah, and all of that started as soon as they began to train the fascists in Spain and in Latin America, and eventually the funding for the fascism and the Irish Troubles is raised in Australasia. Yeah, which is why Lord Sanderson of Bowden interlocks to that massive Australasian Scottish cabal, Department of the University of Liège, Belgium. And this is the Montefiore dynasty as it was described in Wikipedia. There's nothing to learn now. It only takes you back to Moses, yeah, in the Old Testament in 1754. Prominent British Jew, financier, stockbroker, banker and philanthropist. The fiery mountain that gets them the name in the first place is not yet identified, because they're all now associated with Britain. And we've seen the diasporas that the promised land that takes them into Israel, that used to be Palestine, and their holdings offshore, because there might be oil wealth off the Palestine shore, which is why it was partitioned in the first place, like Norman Lamont's islands up north of Scotland. Okay? And I'm talking to an innocent from that Hebridean island, yeah, that is Orkney, that has never heard of Norman Lamont, our august Chancellor, yeah, on the board of the NN Rothschild Bank with the man that we talked about in the earlier video, the Field Marshal Lord Charles Guthrie of Dundee. And I should have played you the Bonnets of Dundee song, because it gets me all riled up. Yeah, the armies of Scottish people that are prepared to desert their country are massive. John Israel Montefiore, New Zealand trader and merchant. Let's read it, it looks interesting. Claude Montefiore, 1858, Jewish philosopher. Dora Montefiore, Faustus. Hugh Sebag Montefiore, 1955. Hugh Montefiore, 1920 to 2005. Bishop of fucking Birmingham. Yeah, in the crime scene with the Royal Hospital and Gordon Brown's manipulations at the UN as the terror threat blows the brains out of his friend Malala, and she's allowed to speak at the UN within weeks of getting her massive brain injury repaired at Birmingham Royal Infirmary. Moses Montefiore, prominent British Jew, 1784. John Israel, 1807, New Zealand trader and merchant. Georges Montefiore Levy, Belgian inventor and philanthropist. It's the Department of Electronic Technology. Poppy Sebag, Poppy, yeah, the joke about the war dead. Are you beginning to see how bold and brilliant they are, with their bow tie on and the champagne in their hand, celebrating the triumph of the barren rocks of Aden? And when you play that song by Andy Stewart and you look at the footage, they are carrying through in a military vehicle the Christian cross in full view. That's the Poppy Bush war dead joke, and the Poppy Fund is run by the Duke of Westminster, Britain's richest man, and the brother of the former Duchess of Roxburgh, yeah, who's been mistreated by her husband, but all of them are massive millionaires. Poppy Sebag Montefiore, George Poppy Bush, that's George Herbert Bush, who brutalised Kurdistan in the Kurdistani war crimes, and they used the chemical weapons that the people from the World Bank, Angela Kane, could not find in Syria, or that found them again in Syria in 2014. But David Cameron was prudent enough, or scared enough now of the acts of God, not to take Britain into that conflict again. He's warmongering this week, and I disapprove of that David the demonization of Islam is totally created by these cross religious movements entirely for profit, which is why all of them are run by fat bastards from the banking dynasties. But the Rothschilds are slim and are key thinkers in this plan. I thought, cannot see what that is. That's a Hebrew name, Montefiore Minor, planet orbit. Oh no, it's a planet orbiting the sun. Montefiore Cemetery, Jewish cemetery in St Albans, Queens, New York. St Albans School is where the Bush children learned to interlock with the actors in the Usual Suspects movie. I forget what his name is, but he's the one that gets all the profits from the Kaiser Soze scams, and his mate, who was the agent for Kaiser Soze, was a Jadi, and he died really young, and I'm not at all surprised by that. Usual Suspects movie, Virgil Kint went to St Albans School with Kermit Rockefeller and George W. Bush's son, and with the actor that was in the movies and played the role of the serial killer in the NHS. I forget his name. He's the hero. Robin Williams also went to St Albans School, elite school for Kermit the Frog, Rockefeller, the banking dynasty. Montefiore Hill, lookout located in North Adelaide, named after Montefiore. That's Australia. Interlocked with Lord Sanderson of Bowden and the Scottish Freemasons. Montefiore Hospital, disambulation. Wessex Lane Halls, the University of Southampton, student loans, crime scene. Glynis Breakwell and Dame Helen Alexander. Okay, those are the Vice-Chancellors. She is a massive profiteer at the students' expense. She runs Rolls-Royce. She runs dozens of economic events on the crashes that I showed you. Even in the late 1990s, the Montefiore Institute. Okay, Leveson today. What is this? Oh, sorry, we're at the bottom of the page. Oh, Lachlan Murdoch, the dependent son. Meet the Murdochs. Like his sister Elizabeth, Rupert's oldest son, Lachlan, joined News Corp. Is that a military uniform, or is that a paisley pattern for a religious laugh? At an early age, though at one point he was considered his father's successor, he's no longer with News Corp. Yeah, he might be jobless, the poor bloke. Business Insider. He almost did 18 months or so ago. What is this? At one point during his time with the company, Lachlan oversaw Australian media operations and oversaw them well. This is written by which of Murdoch's outlets? No, I cannot see that. Okay, let's keep going up. So they're in the Chipping Norton set through this one. That's Elizabeth. Listen, looking woman, no chins at all. Yeah, lovely smile, friend of the Prime Minister Cameron, chandeliers on the walls. Yeah, that's part of the religious joke out of the Cluny Abbeys. Yeah, and the Del Boy Books joke, like the Cluny Books joke. Yeah, Elizabeth Murdoch, Rupert's second child and first by his second wife, lives in London. Yeah, Chipping Norton, second home, where she owns and operates a TV production company called Shine. It's the largest independent producer of TV shows in the world. In other words, these are the Rothschilds' monitors for all of the false news and all of the remuneration for their persecution by the media is given to them. And only Sean Hoare tries to expose them, and he's murdered by them. but because that news comes from their vents, it is made to look like a suicide, and the last picture of him in a pub is with a glass of orange juice. Yeah, they're not always careful about what they report. Yeah, and Rupert Murdoch is a warmonger all over the world, everywhere. He's the man that supported Tony Blair and George W. Bush in demanding that we go to war in Iraq. Okay? Well known for hits like The Office. Yeah? All of it a parody about the world's museums, a parody about the man that is the decrepit actor in The Office that is just a buffoon. He plays the curator in the museum film, which is a joke about killing the pagans and all of the armies all across the world so that they can own them out of Chipping Norton, Oxford, yeah, Cambridge, Göttingen, Heidelberg, and all of the usual no bombing suspects. They're physical cowards. They send millions and millions, that's billions in world history, to their deaths. She's a nice looking woman though, isn't she? Right then, and she's married to Freud, the psychiatrist. Here we've got the Murdochs have no title and are naturalised US citizens, gifted that by Gough Whitlam in Australia, the Nugent Hand Bank, which was defrauded by them. Yeah, and this is one of his earlier wives. This divorce is reportedly known to be one of the most outrageously expensive divorce settlements in history. Why do they care? They own all of the issuance of money in every continent across our globe. 200 years this week since they took over the Bank of England and the Bank of Austria. Yeah, public inquiry into media behaviour. It was announced on 13 July 2011 that Leveson would lead the public inquiry. That's the Lord Leveson, who's from Liverpool with vast estates, is a relative of the Dukes of Sutherland, who sent the colonists to the colonies, and he makes the film about Gallipoli. Yeah, the Gallipoli massacre of the Anzac troops with Mr. Bean, the war correspondent for Gallipoli. Yeah, they're allowed to get away with murder and they get remunerated like Matthew Freud and Elizabeth Murdoch at the Leveson inquiry. So they wanted Leveson to be removed because of this scandal. Let's listen. Not because he's related to the elites that run the world since the colonists went to the colonies, yeah, but because they're talking to each other and they're planning. This one visited Prime Minister Cameron 20 times before Cameron was elected in 2010. They met on their elite yachts 20 times. That's democracy today. It is a fascist cabal. On 20th July, Prime Minister David Cameron announced that the scope of the inquiry had widened. So let's read the whole thing. Public inquiry into the issues of media regulation raised by the News International phone hacking scandal. 20th July, Prime Minister Cameron announced that the scope of the inquiry had widened to include the BBC, Benai Birth Company, and social media. It was subsequently reported in the media that Leveson had attended 2 parties, not 20 meetings, in the prior 12 months at the London home of Matthew Freud. Yeah, that is the psychiatrist in the Chipping Norton set with Jeremy Clarkson, and formerly, in these days possibly, with Ronnie Barker, another fat bastard who takes the piss out of Britain's politics, Britain's law enforcement, and the Mackay scandals, Mackay being the highest law enforcing official in Scotland. On the other side of the Lothian coast and the Firth of Forth, which is Gordon Brown's constituency in Fife. These revelations to a number of Labour MPs calling for Leveson to be removed from the inquiry. These were two large evening events attended in Leveson's capacity as chairman of the Sentencing Council. Yeah, on the 7th, Sheriff at Jedburgh, even on my innocent divorce case, yeah, and they cannot account for themselves because they're massive criminals and money launderers. Sheriff Patterson with 1 T, with previous at Brodie's the solicitors and at the Morton solicitor firm, and the Morton people are the warmongers in World War II. Yeah, interlocked to the Flemings and interlocked to the future of Syria Fund even today. The context of these events is fully described in Leveson's declaration of the inquiry website. Yeah, it's a stitch up. And the president in America, when he was made an American citizen, was Gerald Ford. Yeah, Gough Whitlam at the Australian end of the crime scene. Bloodlines. Can't find a bit about the local council. And Alex Nichol, yeah, who was in charge of appointing the new CEO when I applied for the job and offered to cut my professorial salary right down, yeah, and to reduce it. And what happened was the head of HR at the Borders Council, Tracy Logan, got the job with Alec Nichol as the appointee chair. Yeah, Lord Leveson Gower. So this is the linkage to the families and the linkage in the peerage registrations to the Duchess of Sutherland and the Duke of Sutherland. There we go. George Leveson Gower, 1, Duke of Sutherland, Wikipedia. Okay, right then, let's go to Legacy Merton. Merton is the richest college in Oxford. Yeah, it is the home of the Duchess of Sutherland. Yeah, and I think it was Peter Sutherland, not Peter Lothian, who died this week. I've got the newsletter from the church. Let's see. Oh no, Lord Peter Lothian, R.I.P. Sorry, I got a little bit confused on that. The fat bloke with the chins. Devil's Dyke is the largest of several earthquakes in Cambridgeshire, the no bombing zone. Okay, so this is a link to Merton, and the Professor of English Language and Literature. There is J.R.R. Tolkien, who went to Merton College, Oxford. Yeah, and it's the richest college in the world. And it's the warmongering college, and the Lord of the Rings story is vicious. Every one of Tolkien's characters is a war criminal, a world leader, or a religious cleric in the tragic story about the dismemberment of all of our world. And the Roman roads, including the Icknield Way, come into that. That's the David Icknield, David Icke, and the Condoleezza Rice, yeah, and her sister, the warmongering foreign secretaries for the Bush dynasty. Yeah, they are part of the slaving family, all of them tied into this massive cabal. Okay, and I believe that in the lowlands, in the Fens region, is the last place where British witches were burned at the stake, and the last one to be killed was Mrs. Warboys, who's in the Victor Meldrew joke about the tortoises, and the tortoise is a joke about the discoverer of the Nile, yet the head of the Nile, and all of it is pathetic, and the tortoise and the turtle becomes part of the Piso world ownership menagerie joke, which is why Salmond put the panda in Edinburgh Zoo and replaced the gorilla, which is an icon for me, because they know I'm coming in and I'm the King Kong and the Tarzan character that walks on the Duke of Roxburgh's billiard table. Yeah, I don't know how the soothsaying works, and I'm not particularly interested. I'm just going to keep revealing their financial crimes against the world's people and their genocides against the world's people until my last breath. The great land grab, rush for world's farmlands, and that is written by a Mittal, yet the world's richest steel magnate from India now lives in London. Okay, the Afghanistan conflict, the oaklandinstitute.org, writing about land grabs, and that's the Americans. Right then, so this is just about the series of scams that they run and the amount of money that they make, and the university institutions. Remember, we've mentioned Georgetown, we've mentioned Princeton, extending World War I by 2 years, coercing Woodrow Wilson into the conflict. Right, this will be the local council because it's trivia and it's alleged wrongdoings. And Alex Nicholl and his family are very, very decent people. They just live under the threat of the cosh. He was a rugby player, he still attends the rugby, he's a public figure, and he is quite civilised compared to everyone else in this story. They are tyrants. He has the capacity for greatness, and he talks to me again now, despite their gagging order, when I tried to reveal the truth about their toxic debt pool at St Boswell's, right opposite David Murray's golf course and the neighing donkeys. But Alec, poor guy, went to Leith and he engaged a prostitute. Yeah, which is why he was, for a time, the head of the Borders Council, and my mate Mitchell from Melrose is now, whose dad was a Freemason. He's told me, Mitchell, the new boss, that he is not a Freemason, but he got to meet David Cameron because they met recently, just after the referendum, to talk about what they're going to do about me and the fuss that is being created, that is on the false news, that is the front page of every paper. So there he is, Councillor Alec Nicholl of the Scottish Borders Council. I don't think he will be a deserter, or even Tom Weatherston, the local Labour man who had to convert to the Conservative Party to get elected. I doubt very much that either of those will be on the Walter Scott Foundation living it up with Alistair Hutton, the fascist, and the head of the British Legion, and the Las Vegas military tattoo, but nothing would surprise me nowadays. Lib Dem councillor in dropped charges of curb crawling. Oh, they've dropped the charges for prostitute case, is the new chair of standards at the 262 million in debt Scottish Borders Council. That's 2012. Yeah, it's now 2015 June. It's exactly 200 years since Waterloo this week, and they've got in the Borders region the massive human penis that is Pinel Hugh to commemorate that. It was built after the Rothschilds had taken over the central bank, not after the war dead had to be commemorated. It's a celebration of fascism, like the Silver Arrows Project and Kev Drummond and the Selkirk Law Courts and the Selkirk Freemasons and the Selkirk people that cannot understand why only 2 of their villagers returned from the cull at Flodden, which is the Kill Odin joke as well, which is like the Cull Odin Culloden joke as well. SNP-led coalitions includes councillor once charged with curb crawling, now in charge of standards, as the coalition of the Scottish National Party, Lib Dem and independent councillors take position in the new administration at the 262 million in debt Scottish Borders Council. Councillor Pender was jailed for paedophilia. Councillor Pender worked as a rugby player, as an amateur. Yeah, he was in the most successful Hawick rugby team that ever took to the pitch. They won the Scottish Championship 7 years back to back. Yeah, and I know people like Jim Rennick. My dad is a friend of his dad, and all of them, none of them will do anything to stop this. Yeah, I've talked to Rennick. He's a genial character. Yeah, he's a Scottish celebrity with the rugby team. All of them must now understand that the whole of those sporting activities are to cover up the frauds of world ownership, and the Borders people are legends for their capacity to fight battles. Thank you, Alec Nichol, for talking to me again on the pavements, and thank you for removing your threat to jail me about repeating what the dustbin men who've had their pay frozen by you lot for 7 years back to back were saying about the sexual behaviours of Tracy Logan in the office at St Boswell's. Yeah, and that is all part of it. She doubled her salary when you made her the new boss, and she now runs the cabal of border councils to steal from the citizens. Yeah, and none of you are prepared to take on the corrupted governments that do that. I'm very disappointed that Tom Witherspoon will not do that. He was a spirited youngster, a very gifted and courageous rugby player, now a Conservative, because it can get him into power. And legitimately they only earn less than £20,000 a year to work like slaves, so that the people on those boards that I've already shown you can be financial criminals and billionaires. That is the spirited Borders region and what it has sunk to. And the toxic debt pool that they now have is massive, which is why we no longer have garden waste collections, but they've privatised the fucking thing. That's in video 1. Okay? So, false accusations about his nights out in Leith, and you should see Leith now. Yeah, it's like it's like Las Vegas. It's full of administrators for Salmon's corrupted government, and the over budget buildings that they've created are going to blow down in less than 20 or 30 years and have to be rebuilt again at the public expense. And they've got a new way of funding public activities in Britain now. They no longer use the PPP that was the Belfinger bullshit trams builders and the people that built the Parliament building at Holyrood, yeah, right opposite Holyrood Palace, that is an icon for the constitutional monarchy and makes the joke about independence a massive joke. Accusations at Merton this time. What is this? Socially and environmental responsible investing. Oh, this is the one that takes us into the wind power, I think. Taking a little bit of time to load. Financial endowment, socially, and it's Wikipedia. Can't think what this is, but let's have a look. Okay, getting close to the end, and I just want you to know that the whole of the British and the world media is in the hands of the world owners. And I want you to know about the Paisley scam. That's the launch of the cathedral in Paisley, is the launch of sectarian violence in Britain. Financial endowment is a donation of money or property to a non-profit organisation for the ongoing support of that organisation. Usually the endowment is structured. Don't know what this is about. Oh, it takes you back to Marcus Aurelius and all roads lead to Rome and the religious fraud. yeah, and the philosophers and Stoics, yeah, and all of that no doubt will be talked about at Abbotsford, as all of them live in the massive toxic debt pool, yeah, that the Rothschilds and the financiers all around them